Welcome back, everybody, for another deep dive. Today we are going to be exploring
Oh,
the Buddhist perspective on self-love and happiness.
nice.
And the source material that we're going to be looking at is a transcript from a YouTube video. And this video is titled, Love Yourself First, a Buddhist Guide to Inner Happiness.
Okay.
And it's on the channel BuddhaBloomvn. Have you ever had that feeling that something's just off,
Yeah,
but you just can't put your finger on what it is?
absolutely.
I think that's kind of the thing that we're going to be looking at today. Seems that even though we're more connected than ever before,
Yeah.
so many of us still feel this sense of emptiness.
Right.
And we're going to look at how shifting our focus from external validation to self-love can really change our
Yeah.
happiness and relationships.
I think what's really cool about the Buddhist approach
Yeah.
is that it flips the script on everything we've been taught about happiness.
Mhm.
It challenges the idea that our worth comes from, achievements or other people's approval.
It really does. And that's one of the first things that the video points out is this paradox.
Ah.
We have social media, dating apps, instant communicate, all these different ways to connect, and yet loneliness is a huge issue.
Yeah.
Why is that?
So the Buddhist perspective is really interesting here.
Okay.
It says that, it's not about the quantity of the connections, but the quality.
Yeah.
So if we're looking for fulfillment from outside sources,
Okay.
then we're just setting ourselves up for disappointment.
Nah,
It's like building a house on a foundation of sand.
that's a great analogy. So we're always looking outside of ourselves instead of recognizing
Yeah.
that wholeness that already exists inside.
Exactly.
But isn't it normal to want to be in a loving relationship?
Yeah.
How do we know when we're clinging to someone?
Right.
Or is it just enjoying their presence?
That's such a good question.
Yeah.
And this is where this Buddhist teaching of attachment comes into play. Clinging comes from a sense of a lack, a belief that we need something outside of ourselves
Uh-huh.
to be happy. Whereas a genuine connection
Yeah.
comes from a place of wholeness.
Yeah.
A willingness to share our joy
Yeah.
without depending on them for our sense of worth.
So if we're constantly looking for that validation, are we going to feel lonely no matter how many people are surrounding us?
Exactly. That's what the video is saying.
Okay.
And they point out that this conditioning starts very early. We seek approval from our parents, our teachers, our friends.
Right.
And that's not bad in itself, but it can lay the groundwork for seeking external validation throughout our lives.
Okay.
And when our happiness depends on what other people do or think,
Right.
it becomes very fragile.
It's like giving someone else the power to control our happiness.
Yes, exactly.
They could turn up the heat or turn it down just like that.
Yeah. And the video uses these really powerful examples.
Okay.
Napoleon, Princess Diana, Steve Jobs. All these people achieved incredible success, but they still struggled with loneliness.
It's a good point. If they struggled with it and
Yeah.
they have everything that the world tells us we need,
Yeah.
maybe it's not the answer.
Right.
So if we are seeking approval as the recipe for unhappiness,
Yeah.
then what is the alternative?
Well, the Buddhist perspective is this.
Yeah.
Turn inward. Cultivate self-love. And this isn't about being like a narcissist
Okay.
or being self-absorbed. It's recognizing that true, lasting happiness has to come from within.
Okay.
It's about recognizing your worth, regardless of your circumstances or other people's opinions.
So you're saying that if we are coming from a place of self-love,
Yeah,
we don't need to search for that validation.
exactly.
But isn't detaching from people kind of extreme?
Uh-huh.
How do we balance the need for self-reliance with our desire for connection?
Okay, so you've hit on a really important point.
Okay.
The Buddhist teachings aren't about becoming a hermit and cutting off from the world. It's about shifting our perspective.
Okay.
The video uses this beautiful analogy of a tree with deep roots.
Oh, I love a good analogy. Tell me about this tree.
Okay, so imagine this tree that can pull water from deep below the surface. Even in a drought, when everything is dry,
Right.
that tree can flourish
Wow.
because it's not dependent on these external sources.
So it's like we are the tree.
Exactly.
And we have that wellspring of love inside of us.
Yes.
But we're always looking to these external sources.
Yeah, like puddles that could dry up at any moment.
Exactly. So when we cultivate that inner wellspring of self-love,
Yeah.
our happiness is no longer contingent on, other people.
Exactly.
That makes a lot of sense. But how do we actually tap into that?
Okay.
It still seems very abstract to me.
So the video goes on to explore this idea of metta,
Okay.
which is often translated as loving kindness. And this is where things get really interesting.
Okay.
And it's what we'll be exploring in the next part of our deep dive.
Well, I am very excited to dive into metta.
Awesome.
Let's do it.
Okay, so we've talked about how true happiness comes from within.
Yeah.
And now we're going to get into this concept of metta.
Okay.
It's a big part of the Buddhist path to self-love.
Now, you said metta before.
Yeah.
And it's often translated as loving kindness.
Right.
What does that actually mean, though?
So it's more than just like a feeling,
Right.
you know? It's a
Right.
practice of cultivating this unconditional love and kindness, not just for ourselves, but for like literally all beings.
All beings.
Yes.
So not just loving ourselves, but extending that love outwards.
Exactly. And that's what makes it so powerful.
Okay.
It goes beyond, you know, romantic love or even the conditional love we get from, you know, other people. It's just love that doesn't require anything back.
It just is.
It just is.
Do you think that the way that we've been conditioned to view love
Yeah.
is actually preventing us from experiencing true happiness?
I think that's a really good point.
Yeah.
And the video actually quotes Thich Nhat Hanh here. And he says, to love without knowing how to love wounds the person we love.
Wow.
It's a good reminder that sometimes when we try to love others,
Yeah.
it can cause harm if it's coming from a place of neediness.
That's so true.
Yeah.
Like, I've definitely been in those relationships where I was trying to get something
Yeah.
from the other person, and it always ended up badly.
That's a really common experience.
Yeah.
But metta can help us break that cycle.
Okay.
When we practice metta, we can start to see ourselves and others with compassion and understanding.
Right.
You know, we recognize that shared humanity, and it makes it easier to let go of judgment.
So we're going from a place of what can I get to what can I give?
Exactly.
But how do we actually practice this metta?
Yeah.
It still seems kind of abstract.
Well, the cool thing is that you can cultivate metta through these simple practices, like meditation.
Okay.
The video guides people through this meditation where they repeat phrases like, may I be happy, may I be peaceful, may I be free.
Those are so nice. But isn't it a little narcissistic
Yeah.
to just focus on our own happiness?
That's where the all beings part comes in.
Okay.
So you offer those wishes to yourself first, but then you extend them outward to your loved ones, neutral people, difficult people, and then eventually all beings.
So it's like radiating that love outwards.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It creates this ripple effect
Yeah.
of kindness.
I love that.
And the amazing thing is that as we practice this,
Yeah.
we actually experience those qualities more and more in ourselves.
So we're giving and receiving at the same time.
Exactly. It's like we're watering our own garden and then watering everyone else's around us.
The video also talks about non-attachment.
Right.
How do we cultivate loving kindness and detach from people at the same time?
That's a great question. Non-attachment is often misunderstood.
Okay.
It doesn't mean that we stop caring about people.
Right.
It means we let go of clinging to them.
So you're not saying be aloof or distant?
No, not at all. It's about recognizing that everything changes.
Okay.
Even our relationships.
Yeah, that's true.
And this can be really liberating.
Okay.
Well, when we let go of needing to control the people that we love, we open ourselves up to a deeper connection.
Okay.
We can just enjoy the present moment without worrying about the past or the future.
Right.
We let people be who they are,
Yeah.
and we don't try to change them.
So non-attachment is like finding that balance between love and freedom.
Exactly.
But how do we actually let go of that attachment?
So the video gives us this really good metaphor.
Okay.
It's like holding sand in your hand. If you clench your fist tightly,
Yeah.
the sand slips through your fingers.
Right.
But if you hold it gently with an open palm, it stays.
I like that.
Yeah.
But letting go is still so hard.
It is. It's definitely a practice.
Yeah.
And it takes time.
Right.
But the video gives us some good advice.
Okay.
First, we have to be aware of our attachments.
Okay.
Notice when you're feeling anxious or jealous.
Yeah.
Ask yourself what you're afraid of losing. What story are you telling yourself?
That makes sense.
Yeah.
So once we figure out those fears, what do we do?
So the video suggests some good practices for letting go of those unhealthy attachments.
Okay.
And that's what we'll talk about in the next part.
Alrighty. Let's do it. Okay, so we've explored this idea of metta,
Right.
cultivating that loving kindness for ourselves and all beings.
Yes.
We've talked about non-attachment, learning to let go of that need to control.
Right.
But how do we actually put this into practice in our daily lives?
Yeah.
Especially when, we're faced with self-doubt or we fall back into those old patterns of needing that external validation.
The video offers a few practical techniques for working with that.
Okay.
One of the things that stood out to me was the idea of replacing that self-criticism with self-compassion.
Yeah, that's something I struggle with, for sure.
Yeah.
I can be my own worst critic. There's this voice in my head that's like constantly pointing out all my flaws and just saying, you're not good enough.
That's so common, though.
Yeah.
But the Buddhist perspective encourages us to treat ourselves the way we would treat a close friend.
Yeah, that's easier said than done.
It is.
How do we shift from that inner critic to a more compassionate voice?
So the video uses this really great analogy from Thich Nhat Hanh.
Okay.
He talks about caring for a lettuce plant.
Okay.
If it's not growing well,
Yeah.
you wouldn't yell at it or tell it it's a failure.
Right.
You would try to see what it needs: more sunlight, water, better soil.
That's such a good way to put it.
Yeah.
So instead of blaming ourselves, we can approach ourselves with curiosity and see what we need to thrive.
Exactly. And that's what self-compassion is.
Okay.
It's recognizing that we're all works in progress and giving ourselves grace.
So instead of beating ourselves up when we make a mistake, we can just ask ourselves, what can I learn from this?
Right. What can I learn? How can I grow?
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
The video also mentions this idea of releasing toxic attachments.
Yes.
Which can be so challenging, especially with relationships.
It can be really hard to let go of relationships that are no longer serving us. But the Buddhist perspective is that clinging to those relationships actually creates more suffering.
It reminds me of that Buddha quote about holding on to anger is like drinking poison.
Exactly.
And expecting the other person to die.
It's the same thing.
We're the ones who end up getting hurt.
We are.
So what do we do?
So the video suggests that we start setting boundaries.
Okay.
And this might mean limiting contact, having tough conversations, or even walking away.
Wow.
But it's about knowing your worth.
Yeah.
And not settling for less.
That takes a lot of courage.
It does.
But it's an act of self-love.
Yes, it is.
Creating space for something healthier.
Exactly. And sometimes the best thing we can do for ourselves and the other person is to let go.
It's true. The video also talks about enjoying our own company.
Yes.
And it seems like that's a big part of cultivating self-love.
It is. And this can be so eye-opening for people.
Yeah.
We're so used to seeking entertainment, validation from external sources that we forget how to just be with ourselves.
I know for me, I used to think that I always needed to be doing something or be around people to be happy.
Right.
But now I'm learning that solitude can be so restorative.
It is. And it allows you to connect with yourself on a much deeper level.
That's a good point. The video suggests that we, do things that we enjoy.
Yes.
Take a walk, pursue a hobby, or even just take yourself out on a date so we can reclaim our time and energy and devote it to things that bring us joy.
And realizing that our own company is valuable.
Yeah.
We don't need other people to entertain us or make us feel good.
So just to recap, the Buddhist path to self-love involves, cultivating compassion, releasing those unhealthy attachments, and embracing solitude as a way to grow and connect with ourselves.
You got it.
Yeah.
And the video emphasizes that this is a practice.
Right.
There are going to be times when we fall back into those old patterns.
Yeah.
The self-criticism, the seeking validation.
Right.
But the important thing is to just keep practicing.
Yeah.
Keep coming back to those practices, the self-kindness, the setting boundaries, and that connection with ourselves.
It's like we're learning to be our own best friend.
Exactly.
And as we do that, our relationships with others will change too.
They will. The video ends with this really great message.
Okay.
The love we've been looking for has always been within us.
That's so powerful.
It is.
We don't need to earn it or find it in someone else.
Nope. It's already there.
So what would it be like to embrace that love?
Yeah.
To let go of all those beliefs that are holding us back.
Right.
And just accept ourselves for who we are.
What would that feel like to walk through the world with that love?
Wow.
Not just for ourselves, but for everyone.
That's something to think about. So as we wrap up this deep dive on self-love, I encourage you to keep exploring these ideas.
Absolutely.
Try out the practices, see what works for you.
Yeah.
And remember, cultivating self-love is a journey.
It is.
It's a process. Yeah. And every step you take is a gift to yourself and to the world.
It is. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks, everybody.